industry is going through a transitional shift, whether it's through layoffs, organizational changes, or simply the way they conduct business. As Sean Layden said, back when he was around, games cost 5 million, now they're costing 250 to 400 million. It's a big difference, and the games coming out now just require a mass more volume in sales, and therefore companies are starting to look elsewhere. Sony is already looking at the Nintendo Switch and PC. Microsoft has already pretty much put their games everywhere. But is Microsoft performing the greatest 4D chess that's actually been available by outsmarting everyone? And that is by the inclusion of Steam. Now, the question here is, what will Steam actually do, and will Sony try to block it? Because that's the key question here. There's a lot of PlayStation games, first-party games from Sony on PC, and the debate that's going around right now is whether Sony can actually block those games. Now, if the PC Xbox is going to essentially be running on a System32 API, then you really can't block it. I know Jez Corden is out there saying that with the actual GeForce Now, GeForce found out the hard way, so they blocked it. Well, that's not entirely true, because GeForce Now licenses those games to put onto the platform to stream the actual games. This is why companies like Boosteroid, who actually stream the actual PC, are still able to stream those PlayStation games, and Sony can't do anything about it. Literally nothing. They can't actually stop it from being streamed, because you're not actually streaming the game, you're streaming the PC. So there are workarounds even in the cloud universe. It's just what GeForce Now offers is a very, very uniquely tailored service. So using GeForce Now, which is, Jez should really know better, is not really the smartest way. Now, of course, Cole Eastwood also jumped on that bandwagon, saying that yes, you could, but if you've seen his recent video, he's now changed his tune and said that, he doesn't believe that they can block it. Of course, Tom Warren came along and made a very, very valid statement. You can't really pick and choose when it comes to PCs what you can block and what you can't. And then there's the overall fact that, Steam, Valve, as part of their policy, they're paying for the license to have the game on their store. Well, they won't block anything from anyone that can run the Steam library. Now, obviously, if it's not compatible, like, say, the Steam Deck, they tell you it's not compatible, but if you install it and it works, happy days. And a lot of the Steam Deck games go through that process, right? There's a lot that actually says it's not compatible, but they actually work perfectly fine, because there's a ton of games on Steam. But the way it is right now, there's legal implications as to why Sony can't tell Valve you have to block these games off certain PCs from not working. They either work or don't. And the only thing that Sony can really do is basically break their licensing agreement with Valve and pull the games off, which they're not going to do because they need that Steam revenue. They need that money coming from the PC market to bolster what they have, because, as the games cost too much and they're not selling enough in quantity. That's why they're constantly releasing remasters. Shuhei Yoshida already told you that, these games cost a lot of money. PC is essentially just printing money because it's so cheap to port. That's where big revenue profit margins come in, and remasters is just the same. It brings in a lot of revenue for minimal effort. Essentially, they're milking that cow. Now, as it comes to, we go back to the whole Windows situation with the next Xbox, which is, that's the path that Microsoft wants to go. Microsoft wants to create a set-top box underneath your TV that you can buy, switch on, you'll get the Xbox UI, and the Xbox UI is not going to have an API. I don't know where this has actually come from and why people have been suggesting that the Xbox UI is just an overlay, just like you have with the big picture on Steam, just like you have, other overlays that you can install on your PC. It is just an overlay. It's not going to have its own API. At the root of the machine, the API will be a Windows call. At that point, there's no way that anyone can actually block this. And, Tom Warren in this situation is actually correct. There's nothing he said here that is factually not correct. So this then opens up the Xbox to be one of the most lucrative machines. And now we've heard, especially with all this chatter about Microsoft going down this route, the PlayStation 6 was supposed to land 2028 at the earliest to give the PS5 Pro some time to, blossom, grow, give people value for their money. Or maybe even 2030, because that's how far they really wanted to stretch it. They want a 10-year lifespan. But the reality is, now we're hearing news that PlayStation 6 could technically land as soon as 2027. Do you know who else is actually now poised to land in 2027? Microsoft Xbox. So what is there to say that Sony isn't now doing the same thing and trying to adopt Steam itself and say, hey guys, we are offering everything the Xbox is offering, but we're offering it on our PlayStation? Can you see what's happening here? I mean, if that actually happens and they turn around and actually go down the Steam route, I want to see how all these PlayStation influencers are actually going to react to the news and how quickly they are going to move those goalposts and start singing the praises of Steam being on their platform. Of course, this has bigger ramifications, right? If you're running a System32 API, and that's great, that opens up the door to VR as well. Without having to actually do anything, you can get VR gaming on your machine as well. You'll get games like Half-Life Alyx, which is arguably the best VR game out there. It's really interesting to see how this is all developing, but when you're looking at it in its bottom line, I'm with Tom Warren here, I'm with John from Xbox Era here. People relying on GeForce Now as the precedent to blocking the games are being absolutely delusional and are completely misinforming, and honestly are engagement baiting or just trying to troll or just trying to cope as much as humanly possible. The reality is GeForce Now is a very, very niche kind of setup. It's very, very specific, and the way they do it is by licensing those games to put onto the platform. The reality is, if you're running a PC, you're not licensing those. You're just booting up Steam and you're booting up your games, and that's it. The Steam platform cannot say, oh, this is a PC from here, this is a PC from here, this is a PC from here. It's not going to do that. It's just going to say, okay, these are the Windows protocols that I'm looking for. This is a PC, boot, done. And at the end of the day, Valve will not block their games of any other form of PC running. Do you know why? Because Valve paid a license for those games, and Valve likes money. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to
comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Give me money. Money. I like money. But this is a big move from Microsoft. If it pays off, it's actually going to be pretty monumental. I've been talking around to people who have kind of adopted PC from a console point, especially after the whole situation with the 30 FPS on the Series X with certain, with a lot of their games. And they've openly said, if this is what Microsoft is doing, and this is what, the direction they want to head in, and they're going to allow me to use my Xbox games and my Steam games and anything else I want on that one console, where it's just a simple, I press the button, it pops up, and I could just go into whichever store I want, buy whatever game I want, and play it at 60 FPS. That is the key here, at 60 FPS. They would be very interested in the next Xbox. And Sony must be listening to this, because at the end of the day, that must be ringing alarm bells, that the old console format might not be the way to go. And if Sony at some point by the end of this year starts talking about Steam going onto PlayStation, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be doing exactly the same thing as Microsoft by opening up their platform for other platform holders to come in to try and entice people to buy their console more. And obviously Sony then have control on when they will push those games to other, operating platforms like Steam and Epic and whatnot, because they're obviously going to still maintain that their games go to PlayStation first before they go to other platforms, at least for the time being. I reckon by 28, 29, 28 I reckon is when they're going to go day and date with PC. I've always said this, but for the time being, that would now look like a possible approach to Sony, but we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of what Microsoft is doing, this is the end game. And if they can pull this off and price it right, they are going to have one hell of a machine ready for everyone. And, you know, it's going to appeal to a wider audience. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it's just, well, why not just buy a PC? Well, a £700-800 machine, console, which, let's face it, it will be a console running on Windows because you're not going to be able to upgrade it. It's just going to be plug and play. You press the power button, you get your UI, you pick the game you want, and it will just boot. Exactly the same way your console does, but underneath everything, it's going to be running Windows. If you want to, you know, stores like GOG and Epic and Steam are all going to be pre-installed, so you can access what you want when you want. And if you want to go through their stores, it's probably going to have some UI gateway into their store as well, where it will auto log you in once you've created an account. So all of this is really crazy stuff, but it's all possible within a, you know, a closed console unit. And at that point, you're not going to get an $800 PC at the power of an £800 console, which is generally subsidized by the console manufacturer anyway. And then you've got the OEM machines, which are probably going to push even further. And those OEM machines now make a lot more sense when you're thinking about it in this way. But folks, you let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that discussion. This is getting more and more interesting. The rumor mill for this and the you know, the theory crafting, the the discussions are just, the conspiracy theories are going wild. But one thing is certain. Xbox fans have finally found something that they can cheer on about. And I know people are saying, well, what is Steam going to do? It brings a whole lot of games that Xbox owners didn't have before, and games that PlayStation doesn't have. So this would, if Sony ever did decide to adopt this approach, it would benefit them greatly as well. Well, not Sony per se maybe, but it would benefit their gamers per se. But the gamers on the PlayStation side don't really care about what benefits them. They're all about what benefits the company, which is really weird, because as a consumer, you should be thinking about, well, what benefits me and not what benefits the company. But, you know, Xbox fans is what benefits me. PlayStation fans are what benefits the company, because whatever benefits the company, that's great because we love the company. Weird mentality to have, but that is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that discussion. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that like, subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release, and I will see you in the next one. As always, remain legend.